and welcome back to JLXP with Kien Lam, the weekly episode that we do right after your 10 Thoughts series comes out. Although, it's 4 thoughts now, because there's 4 teams left that you felt worthy of giving thoughts to as we move towards the semifinals. But we've had 4 best of 5s in 5 days because of the compressed playoff schedule we ended up doing since we missed week 8 of the LCS, or rather delayed it. So, how are you feeling after seeing so many of those best of 5s?
A few of them were quite good. I only have thoughts for teams who are still alive. So if you're knocked out, you're dead to me until summer.
So Golden Guardians is dead. 100 Thieves is dead. I feel like you would have had thoughts for TSM if they would have lost that 5th game.
Yeah, I think I would have had thoughts if TSM lost that one. Definitely, just by the nature of how it would have happened. There are times where I decide to have some thoughts for the dead, but it has to be spectacular circumstances, like Team Liquid or if the TSM would have lost. But, I'm glad that we've narrowed it down to 4. I think it's a fairly expected Final 4.
Yeah. Quick tangent kind of at the top of this, because while we had the LCS playoffs going on Tuesday and Wednesday, Valorant was doing their closed beta stuff. But the thing that I wanted to talk about was there was a Riot devs versus big name streamers Showmatch last night that you and I both watched. It was cast by, I think, Rivington and Golden Boy. It was really interesting because it was Summit and Shroud, and I think they had Skadoodle on the team as well. I forget the final 2.
It was Dizzy and Flam.
Yeah. So big name streamers, several former pro Counter-Strike players, and they kind of just got obliterated by the dev team. And I feel like in doing so, the dev team gained a decent amount of street cred, Yeah,
I think it's there's always that joke about, the LoL balance team is gold players. You only have to be gold or whatever, which is not true. But I think the Valorant devs have kind of gotten ahead of that and hey, we're insane at this game. How dare you question our balance when you can't even beat us, right?
Yeah, I mean, several of the designers that they have are former CS 1.6 pros, and then they had playtester Dan, who's just really good at games in there, and they had Nick Wu as well. But it actually made me think of the last Rioters versus Pros event that I remember taking part of. This was a league event back in, it was 2012, around June or something, and I think I'd been at Riot for 3 or 4 months, and this is at the time where I was still quite good. I'd been a pro player 6 months ago or something, and they thought, hey, maybe the 5 best Riot players would be able to take on 5 pros. And the way they pitched it to me is they said, well, we want it to be this big thing, so we're going to get these big personalities that's not really going to be about the best players. It's going to be about just, popular players, and then we're going to have them play off-role. So really it'll be competitive. Because I was like, you do know that, if they're currently pro players, they are going to beat us. Because what I liked about what the Valorant Showmatch did is they did it at the time where the knowledge difference can exist, right? Mm-hmm. Where these streamers have been playing, but only for depending on if they're in the closed event to now, 4 or 5 days. Whereas these devs have been able to hone their skills using the abilities, knowing the maps, and all that stuff. Whereas when we did the show match, we didn't have any of those things. We were just oh yeah, we're playing the same League of Legends game. Anyway, the long story short is in that game, I don't feel like we did it right. We got completely smashed. The off-roll thing was a lie. We ended up just playing really damn good pro players. It was Mac Noon in the top lane, who later went on to win Champions Korea. It was Messiah in mid, who at the time was the basically best mid laner in the world, Chinese mid laner in the world. Snoopé was their jungler, who at the time was also COG EU Snoopé, super good, top competitive jungler. And the only thing they had is they, quote, had 2 supports in the bot lane with, I think, Mistake and Elements. And that was clearly the kind of weak link. But Mistake was basically just this godlike AD carry who actually went on to win the Season 2 World Championship as a support. So anyway, it was totally misled. And I know how those things can just go either way. But I don't know. I thought it was going to be an interesting tangent because I liked what the Valorant show match had where you actually did have that, hey, let's show off the dev's skill, but also everyone kind of knows that if they win, they have those inbuilt advantages. So it was cool. It was entertaining. I'm happy they did it, and it's just kind of kudos all around.
So, do you remember what your team was? So, this was actually a few months before I started watching League of Legends because I started following in 2012 Worlds.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious. Do you remember who your team was? Who was the 5 best Riot people?
Yeah. So it was me in jungle. It was Roku in mid lane, who had been a really good. It's actually interesting. All 5 of these people are still at Riot. So
Roku's still around.
Roku is the lead of the playtest team, I believe. There was Milkow in the top lane. He was like a flex player, but he was like a 22 or 2300 elo player, so he was always top 100 of the solo queue. He's actually worked on Valorant for the past like 3 or 4 years. Our AD carry was Classic, who also was like a senior game designer or design lead on Valorant. And we had Static as our support. He was big designer on League for a long time, and I believe he's working on TFT stuff now. So yeah, that was the team. We were good. We did like a weekend of scrims and practices. We scrimmed some quote pro teams, and that was like pre-LCS, and we could take a few games from Complexity, but they probably had like a 70% win rate. So we would have actually been like an academy level team at the time, like maybe like top 10 team in NA or something. But that's just going to get smashed by this like all-star team they put against us.
Yeah, I mean that's like I don't know, people like the names you threw out are all legendary names that I think a lot of people watching now don't remember, but like Messiah is still extremely popular. So it's like stuff like that was just, I don't know, that's a crazy thing to think about. Like I know that the casting team is pretty high elo like efficiency wise, but you're basically all jungle mains. Do you guys ever do like a clash thing? Who has the off roll in that case?
Yeah, we tried doing some like flex 5s about a year and a half ago. I swapped to mid because I was trying to roll swap. We had Kobe jungle, Zale top, Freak ADC. We just could never, weirdly enough, we could never find like the right schedule or time to actually make the games work. So it just kind of fizzled out. Everyone has their own like gaming groups that they end up playing with. So like I think Azale's been streaming a lot with Flowers and like their friend group. Kobe has his whole like crew that he plays with. So we haven't actually made that 5-man team. What has happened though, for those, I don't know, I do want to give some credit for back when I was on the game design team. Like the Valorant devs are insane. Like massive credit for former pros. The playtest team at Riot is actually wicked good. There's multiple challenger players that maintain challenger rank on that team. They have like a nice little like meme board where they actually track everyone's rank. So like if someone actually falls to diamond, they just like move them to they'd like move their face to the diamond section to like shame them or something because they're not grinding enough solo queue. So yeah, the League guys are actually super good, even though there's like silver balance team memes.
Shout out to Penguin specifically, who was not only in the Valorant playtest yesterday, but is also on the like one of the best League players at Riot. Like as a mid, like I'm pretty good at mid, and Dan always shits on me whenever I've played against him. So shout out to him for being good. Also, while we're talking about casters, shout out to Freak and Riv, who were big time testers in Valorant Alpha. They're both insane at Valorant. So if you're looking for like League of Legends casters or personalities to come over, like Riv and Freak are like really, really good at like high diamond challenger level.
Yeah, I mean Riv has been a shooter guy, back over a decade ago, and Freak is just like a good player of all games. A lot of people don't realize how much that guy just plays a wide variety of games really well.
Yeah, so they're nuts.
Anyway, you brought up before this, we could speak about the mismatch that was the Valorant Showmatch, and then just foray that into the mismatch that is the LCS playoffs between Cloud9 and everyone else, and how we can kind of reconcile this fact that C9 is so ridiculously dominant. I mean, you had, I think, you had a few really good quips in your writing this week, but for C9, you were like, C9 dismantled 100 Thieves so badly that we all dismissed them as a bit of a fluke team until they went to 5 games in a nail-biter against TSM. Now, in hindsight, I think you really have to admit that it's not so much 100 being bad as it is C9 just being so insanely better than everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Like I remember, I think right after the 100 Thieves series against C9, I think all of us were kind of memeing them. We're like, oh, like this team's terrible. Like, because C9 beat them, and it was like successful. It was like faster and faster too. It was like
Yeah.
30 minutes, 20 minutes, and it was just like so fast that series that just made you like, oh, we were right about 100 Thieves all along. They weren't ever this good. And then the 100 Thieves played TSM and went to 5 in a series that like they easily could have won.
Yep.
If a few things like it was literally an auto attack away at the end from flipping that. I think if they had stopped that, I don't know. I'm not gonna call it base race, or I don't feel like it was desperate or anything, but like if they had gotten that last auto attack and prevented the Nexus live with the sliver, I think they just pushed down mid and win, right?
Or if Cody Sun doesn't get one shot by Bjergsen Zoe, which was like a ridiculous Zoe play with it's either sidestepped or just missed sometimes whenever you're going for Zoe Q's that long range.
Yeah, no, it's insane. Like just so many different things that could have happened, and 100 Thieves could have won the series. And I think all of us were pretty high on TSM's potential or whatever. And I think what we saw was, hey, look, the standings were the standings for a reason. The other teams in the middle are all fairly evenly matched. Cloud9 is just like we just somehow underestimate Cloud9 every week, and I'm gonna try and make you do that again this week. I'm gonna try and get you to explain to everybody else like, okay, this is how C9 is gonna lose, and we're gonna like go through scenarios like,
okay.
We're gonna start drumming up like, oh yeah, this is how it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna 3-0 the next team, and then we're gonna do it again next week. Like, oh yeah, this is how C9 is gonna lose. And then so it's this thing where I think part of it. From my interest of trying to keep like a narrative interest in the split is like, oh, I want to like how do we, like it's because like we can't just literally hand the championship to Cloud9, and of course that's not how it's going to work.
Yeah,
but it does feel like we should just hand it to them, right?
If they continue to sweep, if they sweep EG and then they sweep in the actual finals, they will be 26-1, which
that's insane.
I think would be the best split in NA ever. Just flat
record wise, like. I know Cloud9 went 30-3 one split, inaugural split, and then they went 29-4 the next split. I think that's a pretty insane run of games to go 59-7 over two
and
splits.
The TSM team was 17-1, and then they 3-0-3-1 the playoffs, which technically but the regular season was something like, if we do best of ones, it was like 35-5 or something. Yeah. So the 26-1 I think would be the best. Like, before we get into talking about how Cloud9 could lose or how we could construct a scenario in which they don't win, I think it's always a little bit of a disservice to the team that is so dominant, and I think this ends up happening in NA for whatever reason more than in other regions. It's like we don't talk about how much better they are in a way that complements how good they are. We do it in a way that talks about how much better they are than other teams, which makes the other teams bad, and why aren't the other teams doing what Cloud9 does, right? Rather than just saying what Cloud9 has done is ridiculously hard. If winning was easy, Liquid would not have finished 9th, right? If winning was easy, TSM would not have brought in Sven and Mithy and then lost to Clutch in the playoffs. So there is definitely an element of appreciation that ends up getting lost with teams like C9 because it is so easy to just talk about the misplays you see from the teams below them rather than really compliment the consistency and the aggression. And I know it got retweeted on Reddit, like the Niski Zoe play where he pulled the minion wave to just like absolutely destroy Someday under the turret. And yeah, just overall, this team has been completely awesome, and it's not like the other teams aren't trying. This is just them being so much better. So
I agree with you that we have a tendency to downplay, and a lot of that's tied to our international failures. Like I think we always look for reasons like, oh yeah, like it doesn't matter if you're good in the LCS because it's still the LCS. I'm curious from your perspective, like it's one of those things that's like a results-based analysis of where we look back. It's like just because we were bad last year, there's no doesn't mean we're bad this year, right? There's really no correlation. It just happens to go, and it's fairly likely that it's a fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like kind of talking about the stock market where you're saying like, oh yeah, past results don't indicate future performance. Like technically that is true, but also you kind of know what's going to happen next in that sense. So like there is a correlation. It's just not necessarily a causation.
I'm kind of curious, like as a native NA caster, like
Yeah.
I know like at international stage you're generally very good at being impartial,
Mm,
but does it ever kind of get to you that people are so negative about NA in particular, or do you
yeah.
feel like it's just like is it just a par for the course kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does, absolutely. But it's one of those things where when you are in the loser's seat, you actually just can't really do anything about it. And I've kind of learned that the best strategy is just to not, just to not like not say anything, not fight it, not be like, hey, they were really close. Actually, we're really good. We should give them some credit. It's like, nah, just
Yeah.
like congratulate them on a hard run. Say you'll do better next year. Like in that sense, because until you actually win, you don't have strong arguments for like what's the point of arguing that, oh, actually, you know, one more game won and we would be having a totally different conversation about the way NA has performed, or like now in this case where they haven't lost, I can say like, hey, actually the last year and a half has been pretty good. Cloud9 made semifinals, Team Liquid made finals, they beat the world champion. They had a bad Worlds, which is due to a number of different circumstances. Two of those teams blew up after Worlds. One of them didn't even make it back to playoffs. So in a sense, that international failure paid forward into the split where the teams that failed internationally actually just blew up or changed. So in a sense, it would be a fresh start. And I agree with the other thing you said about C9, where it's a damn shame we won't get to see this team immediately go up against international competition, because even in this conversation we just had about the best NA teams ever, there's been a few times for me where there's been like really genuine international excitement. I didn't have really genuine international excitement last year at Worlds despite Liquid making finals for whatever reason. I felt like I saw the writing on the wall, and I actually said before the tournament that they wouldn't make it out of groups. But 2016 Spring TSM, I thought could actually make a deep run. And 2014 Spring C9, I thought was really good.
Yeah.
And that team also never got their day in the sun.
Yeah.
Because right after they qualified, and I'm sure you know this as your brother, and you can probably even speak to it on a more emotional level, but like when Hy's lung collapsed, that team kind of died. It never made it back to the same site. That was the last split C9 made. So it's a little bit eerie that when C9 is set up to again be mega dominant, we're not going to get to see them immediately at an international event.
Isn't that crazy? Like between Hy's lung collapse, you had the Jensen Zonia's play. It was also Spring Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I think it was 17. And then now you have the COVID-19 hitting. It's like, is Spring Cloud9 just kind of cursed in this weird kind of way? It's like I don't what did they give up to win the first few championships? And then it's been just really series of just like, it's like misfortune's probably the right word. It's just so really weird circumstances just kept happening. It's like really memorable in really bad ways. If you're a Cloud9 fan, like if you're a Cloud9 fan, you listen to us mention these few incidents, you're like starting to get like PTSD right now. Like you're like sitting there shriveled up, like, oh shit, like what could possibly go wrong here, you know? And it's like this is the one time where like, hey, maybe nothing goes wrong with the team, but the world falls to hell, and so we don't get to see them. Which is like I said, like you said, it just fucking sucked. Well, I should not.
It's fine. It's a podcast.
But it just sucks a lot to not be able to get that immediate gratification of like, hey, they're gonna play, and then maybe this is the opportunity to shut up some of the other teams. Because if what Cloud9 is doing in the LCS, if this was any other team, like let's say T1 did this in Korea, or like we saw this from like IG in China, or like G2, like any team does this in any of those three regions, we would start talking about them like, hey, like this is by far the favorite going into this international event. But unfortunately, Cloud9 is doing it in NA, which doesn't have that same kind of clout. So it's kind of hard for us. Like you said, without actually games, we don't get to see them prove it. And so it's gonna be this weird like month where people are gonna start like, there's gonna be downtime. People be like, oh, you know, like who would win? Like Cloud9's definitely like be better. You're gonna get a lot of weird arguments that are all hypothetical. And it sucks that we won't get to see it played out at least immediately.
Yeah, and it's almost like a fool's errand to be, what would C9 do against G2 or Fnatic? Because like the Fnatic G2 story over in the LEC is really compelling in terms of individually what will happen in that split. But like the G2 that we see now is a weakened version of the G2 we saw last year. I think it's pretty safe to say. And the Fnatic team seems to really be hitting their stride. So, I would be so incredibly hyped to watch and let's not dwell too long on this because it's not going to happen. But in a month, I would have been so incredibly hyped to watch the 2 group stage games between Fnatic and Cloud9.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much history between the two as well. Like, this could have been another chapter in Cloud9 rivalry. Yeah, just really awesome to see. And unfortunately,
either way, the silver lining here is if you do believe Cloud9 is super amazing, and then in, let's say, 3 or 4 months they do go internationally and they don't do well, we can always just say like, timing wasn't right. Yeah, they were actually way better 3 months ago, dude.
just bad luck. It's a win-win situation. If you look at it. Like, we would have won if it happened now, but if it doesn't happen now, it's just unlucky, you know.
Yeah, just unlucky. Okay, hit me up with your. Let's start now that we've built up Cloud9 for 10 minutes. Let's hit with some of the nitpicky stuff of how they might lose.
Okay, so they seem like an invincible team to me, and as I was looking at it, one of my comments looking at the EG sets was, like, basically they're going to need to call up their good friends, Gorgonzola, mozzarella, Gouda, feta, get some of that cheese in there. And to me, it feels like this is one of these teams that's like, unless you beat them at like some weird ass level 1 invade or you get like some crazy, I feel like even if you get a weird jungle path, like I think sometimes the level 2 jungle gank, for example, can be punished, or at least it can be matched on the other side. But you're trading at least like 2 camps for it, right? And so I feel like you really need some weird level 1 cheese where you can reset and just get the free advantage early, or you force flashes or something that can immediately translate into kills. Without that happening, it's like I don't understand. Like I don't see how Cloud9 loses. So I'm gonna ask you, what has to go right? Like what? Like I say, I could like what is the X and the Y that needs to happen in order for not just EG to beat them, but I think it's maybe useful to look at all of these teams. At least this point, I think all 3 of these teams are within a few points of each other of like how close they are in terms of skill. And so I'm kind of curious, like it doesn't matter if you can beat FlyQuest or if you can beat TSM if you can't beat Cloud9 in the grand scheme of things. Like getting 2nd, 3rd, or 4th does not matter. And so I'm curious, like what do these teams have to do to beat Cloud9? So I would like to maybe start with EG.
Okay.
What are the X's and the Y's that need to happen in terms of their game plan in order to actually beat Cloud9?
Yeah, I like this because it is really compelling who gets second. But as you mentioned, like we are playing for the Spring Split Championship, so this was always a really hard thing to do for the 3 years that SKT was undefeated. Everyone would be like, how do you beat SKT? And the answer is always, you don't. And it's like, let's do another segment, guys. But okay. Not flaming this because I think it actually is an interesting discussion because the way SKT would win back 3 or 4 years ago oftentimes was they would kind of just neutralize you for a while and then eventually crush you, which gave you this kind of uncomfortable feeling that nothing you did mattered. Whereas Cloud9 has been beating people so fast that in itself makes it feel like there's nothing you can do. However, in the game they lost, and this is like literally the one data point we have to pull from against TSM drafted something that can skirmish really well early, and then they just continued to skirmish because C9's way to get back in that game was just to continue to try and find fights. They've also had 2 other games that were kind of close. There was a COG game that was kind of close, and there was the Team Liquid game that was kind of close. And the Team Liquid game was interesting because, again, the Ashe was a large amount of initiation that was used well for Team Liquid. So I think something that's actually very core against C9 is making sure you can trap them into fights. So by doing that, you open up your possibility for them to just continue to opt into a fight because they've won so many skirmishes throughout the year, and in those close games, they just kept opting into these really bloody, really risky skirmishes. So trying to get a little bit more like specific to champions that we're seeing on 10-6, Varus is good, If Senna can get through bans, that's good. Callista is good. Like the 80 carry meta is primed for that. Ornn's an incredibly high priority on this stuff. Nautilus or Leona support is still really big, even though it seems like Leona has basically disappeared and it's just Nautilus now. But I don't actually want to see the Tom Kench from EG or Zeyzal. I would definitely want to see Zeyzal. Like, the dream is somehow they can manipulate a scenario where Senna isn't banned and they can get Zeyzal on, like, set or something where he can actually get a large amount of farm and really go in. But I guess that's step one for EG. I need to think a little bit more.
Step one.
What did you think about that? What are your thoughts?
I don't know. My thought literally is they have to invade a level 1 or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get some analysts in here and be like, what do we actually have to do? Because it just seems to me like even if they get in a team fight scenario, it always feels to me like team fights are kind of decided oftentimes on how good your top laner is at like setting up the zone in the front so that you can play like front. Like a lot of team fights are played front to back. It's very rare that you have like super strong like flank positions or like it's much harder to set up, right? And to me, on EG side, Kumo being their top laner versus Licorice feels like a pretty large mismatch when it comes to team fighting.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be really hard to come back from. And it doesn't feel to me like that's the way they're going to be able to win the game is by team fighting, because in a straight up team 5v5, like what happened in that TSM game was TSM just kept outplaying them in skirmishes here. And I'm not sure a team fight is going to be good for EG in that particular sense. I feel like something that could be good is like if you can get Jizuki on the side lane. The C9 is so good at collapsing on side lanes and punishing somebody like Jizuki for overextending that I just don't see like and those being the two scenarios where like Jizuki in a side lane pops off, or you win team fights just by having better like you said, by engaging better. And I don't see either of those scenarios actually happening, because I think C9 is much better at both of those cases. And so it's hard for me. Like the one scenario in my head that this works is Bang is on a hyper carry and like just has the series of his life. It's not even a series. Like I don't see him winning 3 games. Like I don't see him playing like a god 3 times in a row. Like he can play extremely good. But it feels like even if he's at his best, it's so hard for me to see them taking 1 game, let alone 3.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. The devil's advocate I'll say here is, so we already know C9's beat EG twice, and we know they've beaten them pretty badly twice. But here's something that actually might be true. Post 20 minutes, EG might have better macro than C9. Because I think for as great as Vulcan and Blabber have been together in really running the map and really running people over early, the Svenskar and Zeyzal duo is really tested and really experienced in running vision and making macro work. Now, their tools to get to 15 or 20 minutes are much weaker, so they don't have a record-setting lead every single game by that point. But in the scenario where they can actually get some early scouting on Blabber or punish him for some of his early stuff and actually get to 15 or 20 minutes equal, I think EG is fair game. Yeah. And then there's the like team fight mechanics stuff where like Bang and Jizuke do have really good mechanics. I'd say Licorice was better than Kumo, and Blabber's probably still better than Svenskaren, so there'll still be a team fighting advantage for them. But in terms of macro, like that's the one point where I think EG can stand toe-to-toe with C9, so they just need to find some creative or lucky way to reach that point. I guess that's going to kind of be the theory if we talk about like EG or FlyQuest or TSM. Let's try and identify the point in their game that they can compete with Cloud9 in. Yeah. And then, okay, do everything you can to make that happen.
Yeah. So level 1 5-man invade, get the early lead.
I mean, like in that sense, Braum is good, right? Because you can walk it in kind of wherever you want and get an early scouting because Braum wins level 1s. So
can you expand a little bit when you say that EG has better macro? I'm kind of curious, like, because when you say that, like I don't know for sure. So it's hard for me, like what are the markers that you know that EG has better, or that makes you think EG has? I'm guessing it's only slightly better macro than Cloud9, and that's not to say Cloud9 has bad macro per se. It's just you think EG is stronger.
Yeah, exactly. And well, so like literally all of C9's games, aside from like 2 or 3, have gone exactly the same way, where it's just this up and to the right goal graph where they're taking their large gold leads and they're throwing it around, which does have good macro, but it's also easier than expanding a gold lead from a smaller starting point. So it's difficult without actually just like coming straight off a game. And this might sound like a little bit of BS, but it's kind of just like the feeling that I'll try and describe is Jizuke's side lane management in the last month, where he's able to consistently solo kill turrets while the other team doesn't seem capable of responding, is generally because EG is applying pressure in the right spots. So the reason Jizuke can kill those turrets is because the other team is trapped contesting vision, or they're worried about the Baron being taken, or they're worried about catching this other wave that was pushed 15 seconds earlier. So they're very much in sync about where they're going, where they need to go next, and how they're going to respond to an enemy movement. So like they're winning a lot of these games because like Jizuke just autoed a turret 15 times, and now their inhibitor turret is open. And now, by the way, their gold lead is bigger. And that's just an indicator that they're moving around the map really well, which is kind of what I would define as macro, I guess, is just the overall map movements.
I do also feel like sometimes I've seen Cloud9 take Barons that I'm like, I don't know if other teams would have gotten away with this. I feel like teams give them too much respect when they start like a Baron, and they just kind of like back off. And Cloud9 seems to take like these Barons that I feel like should be closer are just almost given to them sometimes. Like it's happened at least a couple times in the split where I remember just watching, like that feels like that was a lot easier than it should have been. And maybe there's a lot of setup that went through that I can't really see, but it's like that's been an impression I've gotten sometimes from Cloud9. And of course, some of what you're saying is also a product of like Cloud9 wins so hard early that it's hard for us to tell, like because we haven't seen them in many situations where they have to have good macro late game. Because when you're so far ahead, it's like in solo queue, you're looking to make montages at that point, and they're just kind of screwing around.
And legitimately, they don't have practice at that. So it's not a huge stretch to say that they're not immediately going to be masters at moving around in an even gold 30-minute game. Because it's not happening in LCS. It's not happening in scrims either. Like a lot of their scrims are bigger stomps than what we've seen on stage. They've been this ridiculously dominant. So it's a weakness brought on by their own immense strength. I don't know what a good analogy for that would be, but that's kind of what it feels like. And it also just kind of speaks to the ridiculousness of how good they are, that's their weakness. Oh yeah, they don't have enough close games.
No, I mean, that is pretty kind of ridiculous. So one of the other narratives in this series that I think was kind of interesting is, and we've talked about this a couple times, it's like it's old C9, Svenskeren, Kumo, and Zeyzal against new C9. And I think if I went back to last summer, end of summer split, and I asked you, and I told you, okay, we're going to split up Cloud9. One team's going to feature Svenskeren and Zeyzal, and the other team's only going to have, Licorice Niski. You still might take Licorice Niski, but I don't think it's like they're 100% better. It's like, I think you would get plenty of people who would take the Svenskeren and Zeyzal combo over the Niski Licorice combo. And so I'm curious, of course, they've built a whole team around both of these sets at this point. So why, like, now that we've, like, as we approach this, in your opinion, why did the Cloud9 Niski Licorice version end up being so much better than the one that had the MVP, Svenskeren and Zeyzal?
Yeah. I mean, I really like the storyline, and I really like the narrative of the fact that C9 actually just had this overwhelming like glut of talent. But I do just think it's about the pieces around him. Blabber is also really good. So they're like, quote, losing Svenskeren, but you're just replacing him with Blabber, who in some ways is better. And then the Kumo versus, like, okay, if we're just comparing the 2-2 that you just did, the Licorice Niski versus the Svenskeren Zeyzal, it's like, let's see who replaces those other two things. It's Jizuke Kumo for the Soul Lane duo, and it's Blabber Vulcan, which I just have so much more power in the Blabber Vulcan duo than I would in the the Kumo Jizuke duo, which is, I think, why it ends up being just better, because the whole team is just so cohesive.
There's a secret. Yeah. Just build a better team.
Yeah, I know. It's a boring answer. There's no fancy secret. Talking about the other series that we're going to have this weekend, and we don't even need to go that in depth about the FlyQuest TSM, because I do like the angle of like which one of these teams has a higher chance of beating C9 at the end of the day. I think I talked about this with Mark on Sunday night. TSM needs to win 4 best of 5s in a row to win the spring split title for a team that has been so ridiculously inconsistent. So like, even if on average I feel like they'd still be the second best team, I almost feel like there's no way they can make it into the finals, because they had that nail biter about 100 Thieves. One thing goes wrong, they're dead. And now they have to beat FlyQuest, and then they probably have to beat EG, and then they have to go face C9. But what are your thoughts on kind of FlyQuest and TSM's trajectories, or even power rankings as a playoff team right now?
I don't have any confidence in either of these teams, just based on some of the stuff we've already seen. I have confidence in parts of these teams, which is what, like when you were talking about, we have to identify what is the avenue in which Cloud9 can actually be challenged. And so the idea is like, okay, what are these teams elite at? And can these elite advantages be used to kind of propel them over Cloud9? And so in FlyQuest's case, you have Power, Evil, and Santorin. It's like a really elite jungle pairing. And on TSM's side, you have like Bjerg said, you have like an elite early game, right? You're very good at the early game. And so there are ways in which they can challenge Cloud9. There are ways in which they can challenge Cloud9 because they do have strong pieces. And I think that's what's exciting about 3 remaining teams, is they all have elite avenues with which to challenge Cloud9. I didn't feel that was true for Golden Guardians or 100 Thieves. Like I thought they were a solid team, but I didn't feel like either of those teams were elite, especially in any specific area.
That's fair.
They maybe had less weaknesses than the 3 remaining teams, like in terms of like their floor was higher, but the ceiling was lower. And I think the 3 remaining teams have some higher ceilings, and I feel like that's what you need to beat Cloud9, right? You can't just be like consistently okay. Like the idea of like the best swordsman in the world always beats the second best swordsman in the world. But maybe the novice swordsman who doesn't know what they're doing could catch them off guard by doing something crazy, right? And so what you have is a TSM here who has shown that they are extremely good in the early game, and perhaps that is the avenue if they can figure out how to stop throwing. Like there's like people are memeing the 100 Thieves TSM series for like Dardoch and Meteos for playing a game with catch, and like throwing it back and forth from each other. And that's one. I think that's kind of one thing to watch going into this weekend as well, is Dardoch in particular has like, and you've been very high on Dardoch throughout the split, and I think that's justified. He's been extremely good in the early game. But TSM has this issue, and you were casting, and we can hear the PTSD in your voice, and you were like, they should win this. Then TSM would start looking like, well, then we were like, oh shit, like maybe they won't win this. So I'm curious, like what is going on with this team that like, it's one thing for us to joke about them and say they throw leads, but like why does that actually happen?
I mean, I think it's just they have a poor ability to do multiple things at once. They're like, they either kill top turret or they take dragon. They don't pressure top turret while defending dragon and stalling. They like they're kind of very one track in that sense. So the analyst test talked about this a little bit yesterday. At this point, you just accept the fact that you're going to have to learn how to macro later. And I think they just do a bunch of sellout early game drafts. Like that's the exciting version of if they ever get to face C9, or even in their quest to beat FlyQuest. Well, actually, the FlyQuest one's interesting because I think FlyQuest is really good at, like, FlyQuest and EG are both quite good at getting to late game, whereas C9 may even be stylistically more vulnerable to a really potent early game, whereas maybe FlyQuest and EG, are like, TSM is never going to get the opportunity, because we've even seen a game in the regular season where TSM sold out for the early game. That was the Pantheon Talia draft. Yeah. And then they just got like Syndra Yumi orned and lost from a 7,000 gold lead. But that has honestly been kind of the only times all year where people have said TSM looks good, is when they pick as many counter or strong matchups as possible and just do a bunch of stuff early on in the game, because that's a moment where they can actually do multiple things at once. Like, you can coordinate a dive bottom while Broken Blade is bullying top lane as Callista. That's something that TSM seems capable of doing, but they don't seem very capable of playing a, back and forth drag and poke game while maintaining wave pressure. That's where a team like EG or Cloud9 even are just going to totally outclass them. So yeah, all in on the early game. Let's see more Callistas. Let's see more Varus lanes. Let's see more like Pantheon jungles, Pantheon tops, stuff like that. That's got to be their best chance at this point.
Is it one of these scenarios where it sounds like maybe TSM has the best shot of beating Cloud9, but they're underdogs against both FlyQuest and EG? Is that a fair thing?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Because the way FlyQuest would beat C9, as you mentioned, is PoE Santorin, but also Ignar. Because if Ignar can get something like Recon, he can apply a lot of like confusion pressure. And if they ever have a strong mid jungle that stops Nisiki from roaming, and then Ignar can start like making C9 make these like weird snap decisions in the mid game, rather than just C9 kind of running whatever play they want, that's FlyQuest's chance. So like FlyQuest wins through mid jungle, TSM wins through early game, EG wins through late game. So they all have like different strengths if they have a chance to beat C9.
So in this FlyQuest TSM set specifically, I said that the way the series would be decided is through top lane, because TSM sends a lot of pressure up and plays around Broken Blade a lot early.
Yeah.
Versus FlyQuest, which just ignores top lane and just kind of like solos, literally just solo on an island. They're also having issues like, oh, maybe Viper has to come in, maybe solo comes in. It's like, it's still not entirely decided. It seems like they're leaning towards solo, and it seems like they're much better at the moment with solo in. But that could also be a stylistic thing, right? Like, it's hard for us to say, like, what if you have to switch your game plan around playing around top, then maybe Viper becomes better than solo. I'm just kind of, is that the matchup to watch for you, or where do you feel like the TSM FlyQuest series will be decided?
I think where the most focus will be is in the top lane, and I agree with that. And I then think the second most important thing is just the Bjergsen versus PoE. Bjergsen's, he's had a really weird year where they like never really seem like they're counterpicking for mid ever. But if he is on like a Zoe or a Syndra, he just smashes everything blind. So it's a little bit of a statement of, we don't actually have, like, there's enough blind pickable mid lane champions that some of your counter picks don't necessarily work the way they may have worked in the past, and Bjergsen's been totally fine just kind of like sitting into that. But yeah, TSM hasn't played around Bjergsen at all. So
it's odd.
The performance of Bjergsen versus PoE is still really pivotal, but it's not necessarily going to be an in-game focus, if that makes sense.
You don't think FlyQuest will maybe pivot and put extra pressure there to try and get Power of Evil ahead?
I mean,
it's hard to gank Bjergsen. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like they would try, but I feel like that might not work very well. So it's really just about like either let's either unlock Ignar to roam, or let's make sure that solo doesn't have Broken Blade carry against him.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So one thing that's, like, as you've talked about the strengths of these teams, kind of got me curious, and we've talked about amalgamations of teams before. If you took EG's late game and combined it with TSM's early game, and then like FlyQuest is like Ignar roaming in the mid game, could that beat Cloud9?
That's the series we need to watch. Like that's the one where we get C9 not finishing 26-1. It's
like we just pause the game halfway through, and it's like, okay, TSM plays we pause the game, and then we have FlyQuest log into their accounts and just finish out, or not FlyQuest, EG logs in at the 15-minute mark and plays out the next 15.
Well, actually, so let's think about this. This, because we did the non-C9 super team, but this is different. This is like
yes.
I think
like actually the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, do you actually take all of TSM for the first 15 minutes?
I feel like you do. I don't know if it's 15, whatever the early, like maybe after Rift finishes, right?
After 10?
They're usually pretty good. Yeah. I think after like the second Rift Herald, like, whenever that gets taken, don't even let TSM drop, because they're not as good at dropping it as EG is. So as soon as the second Rift Herald goes down, we pause the game. We put EG in.
So here's the question then. Do you put in EG with PoE, or do you think Jizuke is too big a part of EG's macro to allow?
He's too big. I think it's too big.
Because what I'm kind of thinking is FlyQuest might not even play in this game. This might just be a TSM EG amalgamation.
Yeah, FlyQuest is like moral support. Yeah, that's
right?
also important. Also
that's
important.
So weird because I think FlyQuest could totally be in the finals, but in terms of like peak strength, neither of them are in this Magic team.
FlyQuest is like built to beat everybody besides Cloud9.
Yes.
So we'll give them the controller that's like not plugged into the console and be like, okay, you guys are part of this right now, but we'll actually have the other two play out the game. And so in this particular scenario, after the second Rift Herald falls, TSM gets subbed out entirely for all of EG. Do we have a series?
Yeah, I think we do. And then the only question I'd have to answer is I'm still trying to find a way to get a FlyQuest guy in here, unless. I know Zeyzal's such a good shot caller for EG, but I'd love to just. I'm gonna mix players. I want Zeyzal shot calling with Ignar, like mouse and keyboard. That's what I want for the support. That's how we get FlyQuest in here.
Yeah, we'll let Zeyzal be like this. Like in Counter-Strike, they have the in-game comment. Here we'll have that guy just always talking, and Ignar can actually play. That's our super team. It's like 6 people.
They get the 6th player.
So it's like 11 people with the 6th player on the board. It's like that's the ultimate anti Cloud9 roster here. We're gonna rig the shit out of this.
I actually think you can put Solo in for Kumo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just You think Solo's?
At that point, dude. At that point, you just leave Broken Blade in.
You just leave Broken Blade in. Yeah. I think for sure you just.
So Broken Blade actually plays the whole game.
Or
Dardoch plays the first 15 minutes. Bjergsen plays.
No, we pick a top laner that a mid laner can play, and we slam Bjergsen in top lane for the second 15 minutes, and have Jizuki play mid. That is the dream.
We don't know if Bjergsen's macro is better than Broken Blade. We don't know if he's part of the problem for TSM not knowing what to do. That's a good point. Yeah, one of them, whoever they feel like, they can choose their representative to go into top lane there. Okay, so what is the full team then? As we wrap this up, it is all of TSM for the first 15.
Yes.
Let's just say Broken Blade stays in.
Yes.
Svenskeren hops in at 15 minutes. Jizuke hops in at 15 minutes for mid.
Bang hops in. Ignar hops in with Zeyzal's brain.
Yeah, that's it. That's the team.
That's how you beat Cloud9.
That's your best chance of winning 2 of the 5 games. Yep.
We should go pitch that to Dave today and be like, we got a good idea to make the series more compelling.
Yeah, we got online play. We can pause it. We'll account share. We'll swap them in.
Yeah. It'll be sick. So if you see a pause happen this weekend, just get a little suspicious. Be like, they're doing something over there.
Okay, who do you think? Just since we actually haven't talked about it, who do you think will win FlyQuest TSM?
FlyQuest.
I think so too. That's what I said on this or that. I think I have FlyQuest beating TSM. I have EG beating FlyQuest, and I have EG playing C9 again in the finals. That's my.
I think that's
my script.
That's how I have it. That's how exactly how I would have it as well. I think they'll be post. I think it's 3-1 honestly. But I think FlyQuest is just gonna. I think it's a bad matchup for TSM, and then I think that EG is bad matchup for FlyQuest, and then Cloud9's a bad matchup for everybody. So
yeah. All right, that's it. Do you have any final thoughts, Kien, before we wrap it up?
Now we've solved the playoffs.
We did. I didn't know we'd go down that road. At first, we started talking about like what's the one way each team beats them, and we're like, well, you know what? None of these are actually going to work. So let's just smash them all together.
Yeah. So rest in peace. Rest in peace, LCS. Kudos to Cloud9. We'll give you the trophy already, unless we can do this Frankenstein thing.
Yep. All right, everybody. Kien Lam, his 4 thoughts are available on lolesports.com, and we'll see you next week.